La 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 la. Look at the bells, look at the bells. Holy crap, here comes Jesus, and he doesn't look too happy.
Before time began, there was
Arkham Trilogy.
But to the fans who care, there is now a second trilogy, the Origins trilogy, consisting of Arkham Origins, Origins Blackgate, and now Arkham Shadow. I'll be looking at all three games and seeing how they compare to each other, and giving my thoughts and experience with them all. If you're here to see what I have to say about a particular game, here are the timestamps for each game, and I've also put them in the description. With that out of the way, let's start with a little bit of backstory. I first found out about Origins through the ancient pages of a legendary text by the name of Gamma Informer, and still being hot off the press from City's release, me and my dad were astonished by the news that another one was being made already. But there's something fundamental about Origins that allowed them to make it so quickly. If you're familiar with emulation of older games, specifically Nintendo games, you probably know about ROM hacks. They're basically fan-made rearrangement of games and assets to change and sometimes completely overhaul a game. So it may look completely different and play completely different. But at its core, it's still the same game. You can apply this concept to Arkham Origins by saying that Origins is basically a ROM hack of Arkham City. Origins has the exact same mechanics and overall game design of City, just completely redressing it as a different game. This is obvious if you play them back to back like I did, but also in the way that certain things function the same way, such as the animations or in-game elements, like the Titan containers or the ice grenades becoming the black mass drug stashes and the glue grenades. It's the same thing with a different coat of paint, which allowed the Origins team to make this a lot quicker than usual. The team that made Origins this time was not Rocksteady, who'd made Asylum and City before it. Rocksteady at the time was working on Arkham Knight, and it was WB Montreal that made Arkham Origins. And this game had different voice actors as well, with Roger Craig Sonic Smith voicing Batman this time instead of Kevin Conroy, and Troy Baker voicing the Joker. All of these changes in casting, as well as a different company making the game, made a lot of people worried about how this game would turn out in the end. And to this day, there's a lot of people who overlook Origins as a core part of the franchise because of its different flavor. For me, it's a strange feeling, because in some aspects, I love this game more than any other in the series. And in other aspects, I feel it's very underwhelming, or even bad. I think the voice changes are not a problem at all. In fact, Roger Craig Smith does a really good job as Batman, and gives a performance that I dare say Kevin Conroy may have not even been able to pull off. Roger's Batman is filled with rage and emotion. His words are heavy and his feelings are perfectly conveyed. And it really gives all of these games more of a grounded story and emotional feel. Troy Baker as Joker, I don't feel does as well as Mark Hamill, but I think it's personally not that bad at all. I think WB Montreal and the whole team put a lot of love into their two Origins games. And I say two because maybe in the most forgotten console release of the series, Origins Blackgate was released on the Nintendo 3DS and PlayStation Vita as a 2.5D Metroidvania style Arkham game. Later they put it on the Xbox 360 and the PC, and to be honest, this game gets a really bad rap. Back when it came out, I never gave it much thought because it was really confusing for me. But about a year ago, I finally played through it and hated it. It just wasn't fun to me, and it was very confusing. But interestingly, while preparing to make this video, I had to play it again for footage, and to my surprise, I actually really liked it this time. It gave me a real perspective change on how this game is meant to be played, which I'll talk about later on when I get to that section. But as it stands now, I really like this game and I'm excited to share my thoughts on it. But those were the only two pre-Asylum Arkham games for a while. A long time passed before we got to hear Roger as Batman again, until 2024, and we got Batman Arkham Shadow, the newest in the series and the second full VR Arkham game. I've got great stuff to say about Shadow, and I'm really just excited that it even exists. I mean, it's been almost 10 years since Arkham Knight, and I honestly thought we would never get to play as Arkham Batman again. Because of the reception of the Suicide Squad game and the passing of Kevin Conroy, I had kind of just accepted that the Arkham series was done. But here it is, and this game is fantastic, capping off the third in a trilogy of Origins games parallel to the main Arkham games. But how do these games compare to one another? First things first, we have to start with the black sheep of the Arkham series, which is Arkham Origins. Arkham Origins is narratively one of my favorite in the series, but not a lot of people see it this way for a very understandable reason, and that reason is the Joker. This game was advertised and marketed as a Black Mask villain story, and in the end, it turns out Joker was impersonating Roman Sionis, and it was never actually Black Mask, which a lot of people were really upset about. And that's very understandable, seeing as we already had 2 Joker stories, and Black Mask is such a good villain for this story. But I still think Origins is one of the most satisfying for me, just because of how good the other aspects are. The voice acting by Roger Craig Smith really sells this new, younger Batman as an angry and vengeful hero. This story has a lot of incredible scenes that show off his passion for this character. But I think the most famous and my favorite of which is this scene right here.
Master Bruce, stop! Master Bruce! Bruce, I will not in good conscience allow you to go. You're outmatched by these assassins.
What?
You're not some hardened vigilante. You're a young man with a trust fund and too much anger. You're in over your head, and I don't want this to be your end.
Alfred, who do you see when you look at me? The boy whose shoes you used to tie every morning? The teenager you drove to his first date? While you are here every night, I am out there. The only thing between the innocent and the predator.
You may be!
No, not maybe. I am. When the mugger or the thief stops to think twice, that is fear. That is what I am. That is why they hired assassins, because I am the reason the criminals breathe easier when the sun rises. So no, Alfred, I am not in over my head. Tonight will not be my end, but it will be theirs.
This Batman is much more passionate, and it gives the story a lot more heart, in my opinion. Seeing a young Batman fully prepared to take on threats presented to him. In this story, Black Mask, aka the Joker in this instance, has hired 8 assassins to take out the Batman for a prize of $50 million. And it's incredibly cool to see how each character tries to accomplish this. First we have Killer Croc, who has a super simple brute force approach, just going after Batman straight away and fighting him, serving as our first boss battle in this game. Then we have Electrocutioner. Then we have Deathstroke, who waits for Batman to come to the final offer for Penguin and catches him off guard, using the element of surprise. Shiva uses a lure of a baby's cry to get Batman's attention and actually tests Batman for recruitment to the League of Assassins, and only wants to kill Batman if he fails those tests, using hostages as bait. Copperhead also takes Batman by surprise, but tries to poison him instead of just attacking him. And when the poison wasn't going as fast as she would hope, she tries attacking him so he could use up all of his energy and the poison would act faster. While Deadshot simply invited Batman to a one-on-one showdown. But the most interesting to me is Bane. See, Bane has always been portrayed as a super brute in entertainment. But in the comic books, Bane is a very different character. A very smart character. It's the venom he takes that decreases his intellect and makes him more physically stronger. The only media besides the comics that portray this side of Bane is The Dark Knight Rises and Arkham Origins. This version of Bane is a much smarter Bane, who waits for Batman, waits for his moment, and uses his opportunities. He even figures out Batman's identity and breaks Batman mentally by attacking Alfred and destroying the Batcave, because this Bane isn't out for the $50 million as much as he is out for breaking the Batman in every way. We only see later as Bane takes a new type of Venom called TN1 that he turns into a less intellectual but stronger Bane that we know from later games. This game tells these characters' stories very well, and even if the gameplay may be simple for some of them, like Deadshot, it's really the narrative that counts for this game in particular, because the gameplay for Origins is where it really takes a nosedive and lacks a lot. But before I talk about the gameplay, let's touch on the Joker's part of the story first. Now, as an origin story for the Arkham series, it makes sense why they went for a story that tells the first night that Batman and Joker meet. The problem lies with them catfishing a Black Mask story. But looking past this, we see a great dynamic between the minds of these two. Watching Joker see a purpose in his madness and see his reflection in the Batman. We see the root of how these two are connected, which is incredibly important. I think if this game was rather marketed as a secret villain, it would have turned out better in the public's eye, rather than a Black Mask fake out. Especially when Arkham Knight's team was also making kind of a Joker story. It was just executed a little bit poorly. And so was the gameplay, if I'm being completely honest. Now, earlier I was saying how Origins is basically like an Arkham City ROM hack. And that was obviously done for time. But the time constraints, and I imagine the lack of experience, also produced some really bad gameplay in some areas. This game is full of glitches, and it's no secret. As well as some of the gameplay things just being reused. The Riddler stuff is also a little less fun. With no riddles to solve and the puzzles being tedious, it's just not as fun as the other games. But with all of this said, this game had some areas being massive improvements. Namely, the crime scene mechanic, which allows Batman to reconstruct a crime scene using parts of the environment. This was so innovative for the series, and it was really fun to play. And no one can talk about Origins without mentioning how much better the boss battles were than City and even Night. City's boss battles were pretty great. Mr. Freeze, Clayface, I've talked about all these before. But Origins gave us more of a reward factor for beating these and learning these boss battles. Croc is fun. He's simple. He's in the beginning of the game. He's obviously not supposed to be a full boss battle, but it's still fun. Electrocutioner Copperhead is really fun too, and has some great visuals, as well as Mad Hatter, who has great visuals too. It's pretty and it's puzzling, while essentially being a reskin of what the old Asylum Scarecrow levels were. Firefly is also an incredibly unique and super underrated boss battle for what it is. But my favorite has to go to the TN1 Bane fight, which is genuinely scary to play because of the sheer power of this Bane. It's paranoia on another level as you sweat and stress over this fight with a literal monster. He looks around for you in this room, this tiny little room, and runs after you if he catches you. In this fight, you are the prey, being hunted, and the emotions it inflicts are unique to the series. No other boss in Arkham history makes me feel like this, and it's my favorite for that reason.
That's all I have to say about the boss. Boss battles in the hey!
Are you afraid to kill? Is that it?
Oh yeah, the single most remembered boss in the series is Deathstroke, and for good reason. This boss has everything you would want. His moves and attacks need to be memorized and practiced. Doing this fight on a hard difficulty with no indicators is a feat to be proud of. It's satisfying and perfect for the legacy of who Deathstroke is in the DC universe. Nothing in this series will make you focused like this fight. It requires you to play near perfectly and sets an impossible bar for boss fights to come. With all the content in this game, it's easy to get overwhelmed with things to do, but so much of it is so great that I feel like this game gets overlooked by the community. It has a great main game, some great challenges, including playing as Deathstroke, a great DLC story with one of my favorite suits in the series history, and we have an online multiplayer mode which allows a playable Robin, Bane, and Joker, as well as all the skins in the game, which completely crush the skins in Arkham City. These Origins skins are so good. The 1 million skin is up there for my favorite of all time. I think this game's story carries its appeal for me, with its skins and boss fights being right below that. Sure, the gameplay may not be very good at times, but its strengths overpower its flaws, in my opinion. So with the first game done, let's talk about its lesser known little brother, Blackgate. Blackgate is by all means a sequel to Origins, with a story that explains more of the space between Asylum and Origins, as well as a bit more of the tease for the Suicide Squad at the end of Origins. This game isn't very well loved, or even talked about, by the community, and I feel like that's very undeserved. Blackgate is a 2.5D Arkham story that is in the Metroidvania category, which is basically a huge maze of backtracking, learning the layout of different areas, collecting upgrades, continuing a story, like searching for little hidden things, stuff like that. And I feel a lot of people don't like this game because of how they look at it. When you play an Arkham game, you have an expectation for it to be a certain way. But Blackgate plays in a very different way than most Arkham games. As it's a title for portable consoles, it's a game that is more of a hobby or a project to complete. It's not meant or designed to be plowed through in one sitting. The designers didn't make it for a large, multi-hour play session. The way this game is designed, clearly for someone to pick it up, put in about 30 minutes to an hour, maybe even less, of just tiny gameplay, then put it away for tomorrow. It's very slow, and it's very different from the fast-paced gameplay of its family, which is why I think a lot of people don't like it. The first time I played it, I was in that same boat. I treated it like any other Arkham game, and ended up not liking it because of how slow it is. But while playing it for this video's footage, I started to understand its appeal, and played it in a different way, just chipping away at it over the course of a longer period. This allowed me to love it a lot more, and actually look at it from the perspective it was meant to be played from. Its gameplay is mostly just running around buildings, collecting keys to open doors in other buildings that lead to more keys that open more doors, occasionally progressing the story a bit more and doing little boss battles. And side note, this game's boss battles range from easy, like Catwoman or Bronze Tiger, to actual impossible, like Penguin or Grundy, because of how much you have to think outside of the box for these. Some of these bosses are puzzles rather than fights, and they will take you forever to figure out. Same with Black Mask too, who will literally just kill you if you make a single mistake, drain your health in an instant. This game's bosses are a trial and error endeavor, rather than maybe a test of skill. And if that doesn't seem up your alley, you may not like this game, but I have to say, I thought I wouldn't like it either. I'm not usually into Metroidvania games, and putting myself in the right mindset to let me play this game in a different way made it more enjoyable to me. I find going the extra mile and collecting pieces for its skins very rewarding. And it's like a game I can go think on and go back to every day, and it's really nice in that way. But that's just the gameplay side of it. The story isn't too complicated. It's basically Catwoman helping Batman get Blackgate under control as Black Mask, the Joker, and Penguin take over the different parts of the prison, while Catwoman tricks Batman into opening a vault that contains Bane. Catwoman was tasked to break out Bane by Amanda Waller of the Suicide Squad. This game sets up for a Suicide Squad game by having Amanda Waller look over its events and watch them unfold while trying to acquire Bane. In the end, Bane escapes, but Waller still ends up with Bronze Tiger, who we see later in Arkham Shadow. And although it took more than 10 years, the Suicide Squad game did eventually come out, but it tells a much later story than this game sets up. And I also want to say that I really like the illustrated cutscenes. Since this was such limited hardware, it would have been a bit ugly to have cutscenes with the in-game graphics, and their alternative to this is really cool. It looks like a comic book, and it's a clever way to get around the limitations of the 3DS and the Vita. Overall, I think this game is underrated for the fact that it's played in maybe the wrong way for most people, and I recommend you give it a second chance if you've played it and didn't like it too much, because that's what I did, and I kind of love it now. But after Blackgate, we get to the most recent entry, Origins 3, or as it's actually named, Arkham Shadow. In 2016, we had an experiment in the form of Batman Arkham VR, a detective horror game that tells a non-canon story to the Arkham universe. Playing as Batman in a VR game holds a lot of promise, but this game went for more of a slow approach, where you aren't fighting as Batman, but rather uncovering a story. But that left room for a true VR Batman game, where you become the Batman in every way. And eventually, we got it in the form of Batman Arkham Shadow. This was the VR Batman game that people have been waiting to play, and I, at the very least, had an incredible time with it. It serves as the third story to take place before Arkham Asylum, and the story is a mystery for who the Rat King is. And the Rat King is a crime lord who controls a revolution on Gotham. And this story takes advantage of one of the best parts of Batman's character, and that is him being a master of disguise. He goes undercover as Matches Malone in Blackgate to uncover more information on the Rat King. And each time we go to sleep and pass another day, we see backstory on how Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent were raised together. And you guys know how much I love symbolism, and this has the symbolism of how both of these grew up to have two sides of them in different ways. This next part is a spoiler for anyone who still hasn't played this game. Harvey Dent ends up being the Rat King, but it's Harvey's evil side who is the Rat King. Harvey's other side, the district attorney, is actively trying to stop the Rat King, not knowing that it's actually himself, which is a really insane concept to grasp, and it was done really well here. And we also have the side story of Jonathan Crane becoming the Scarecrow in this story, on top of a bit more continuation from characters in Origins, like Bird and Harley and Black Mask, Joker, and like I mentioned earlier, Bronze Tiger. But the thing that really rockets this game up to the list of best Arkham games is the gameplay. In contrast to how Origins was, where everything was kind of spectacular except for the gameplay, this one is a perfect VR game through and through. The controls are crafted in such a delicate way that allows you to really embody the Batman and be the kind of Batman that you want to be. Like, are you the type to brute force your way to victory? Or are you the type to take things more strategically and slow? All of the story elements and the gameplay take this game to a new level, and it's an incredible breath of fresh air since we haven't had a Batman Arkham game since the Knight era. And this game also brings back the puzzle solving of Riddler with its Rat King statues and radios. Words really can't explain how good this game is. Now here's the part of the video where I'm going to compare all three games and see which one comes out on top in each category for me. This is a different approach to my other videos, but I feel this trilogy is so much different from the other one in terms of just how vastly different the gameplay is and really everything is. So we have our three Origins games, and I'm going to call out the different categories we have and give awards to the games I think do the best in each category. Then we can see which Origins game is the best in my opinion. Category 1, we have story. Which game has the best story? Now, this one was hard to think about because it was between the original and Shadow. But for the sheer fact that the Joker Black Mask fake out was done so poorly, I think this one goes to Arkham Shadow. My favorite parts of this story was the spoiler I was talking about earlier, the John Crane fear levels, and the character of Joe in Blackgate, which I won't spoil at all because it's pretty awesome. This game's story is wonderfully done, and it's fully deserving of this award. Next category, we have gameplay. Now, when I say gameplay, I mean how the game feels to play, not certain areas like levels or bosses. And for this reason, I'm actually going to give it to Origins, which may come as a huge surprise because Shadow has such an amazing control scheme and lets you play as Batman with full VR controls. So how can this buggy, glitchy mess even compete with that? Well, because you can do a lot more in the original Arkham formula than you can with VR Batman. Sure, VR Batman has free reign over his actions, but as a VR game, you are kind of restricted in what you as a human can pull off. For example, fighting is a bit more tedious in Shadow as you actually have to focus and hit certain parts of the enemy's bodies, and you have to hold the stick in a certain way and punch super fast, which can tire you out physically, of course, compared to the absolutely flawless free flow combat system of the main Arkham games, as well as more gadgets, more gliding options, and more movement options that they couldn't put inside of Shadow. Even though Shadow does the best it can, it delivers an amazing way to control Batman. I will admit, it's a lot easier to control this Batman when you have so much more options. And for this reason, Origins gets the gameplay award. The third category will be boss battles, because for any action game, these are the moments where you feel most engaged and challenged. And to the surprise of no one, I'm going to give this to Origins also. Shadow had some great battles, like the one in Blackgate and the one in the Scarecrow level, but I can't say those can compete with the TN1 Bane for me. Think of Copperhead, Hatter, Deathstroke, and Firefly. I mean, I think this one needs no further explanation. This award goes to the original Arkham Origins. Category number 4 is Secrets and Hidden Collectibles. Now this one is very hard, because all three of these games have good collectibles. Blackgate collectibles are incredibly satisfying to seek out and collect, as the rewards for doing so are different skins you can use, and the Origins ones are pretty fun too. While not as good as Asylum or City, the data packs are still satisfying, and all of your hard work culminating to the reveal of a Riddler trophy, that's awesome. That's a really cool detail that I feel is one of the best parts of Origins, so that also contributes a lot to its enjoyability for me. And as for Shadow, it has puzzles that genuinely stumped me, specifically the keypad ones, and the rat statues were really fun to find. But I have to say, the memories you collect are not very fun, especially the one that you have to activate the end of the game to access. But this award is insanely hard to pick for me, because all of these have their own merits and weaknesses. But in the end, I actually decided to give it to Blackgate. And I'm as surprised as you guys are that this game is getting an award at this ceremony. But after looking over all these secrets, I realized that Blackgate's secrets were the one that gave me the most amount of satisfaction. They're super hard to get to, they require backtracking a lot, but working toward one of these secrets is an endeavor that when you actually get it, it's really nice. And seeing an entire area finished is more satisfying than the other two for me personally. Even though the puzzles in Shadow are super fun, and even though the ending for Riddler is super cool in Origins, I'm still giving this award to Blackgate. Because for all of its quirks, it creates an environment that works really well for collecting secrets. Category number 5 is replayability. For the Arkham series, replayability is a huge part of why I love these games. But which of these three have the strongest replayability factor? For a multitude of reasons, this one is very hard. Because in the original game, there are incentives to play the game again, like the New Game Plus mode and the I Am the Night mode, which is a permadeath mode. And it's a lot easier to say, yeah, I'll play it again, why not? You know, when there's a mode dedicated to it. Blackgate is super long, you may not want to just start that adventure again too soon. And Shadow's appeal is from the story and movement. Like, you've already seen it, you don't need to watch it again, you feel. And Origins has all those bosses that you would really love to replay and can't unless you restart the story. As well as replaying the game with other skins and gadgets and New Game Plus, and there's just a lot of appeal to playing the original Origins. But with all that said, I'm gonna give it to Arkham Shadow. And this is largely due to the fact that this is a VR game. And there's so much more you can do in a VR environment the second time around. And what I mean by that is when you replay Arkham Shadow, you can look at more things that you haven't before. You can try and notice more things, because with a VR game, you can look wherever you want. So that means there's ought to be stuff that you missed the first time around. And given that this game is shorter than the original Origins, I think it's a little bit easier to constitute replaying the entire game. Because for the original Origins, there are some parts that drag, and you'll have to go through that if you want to do it again. The only thing holding back Shadow from a perfect replayability factor is the sheer fact that there's a small battery life in the quest. But eventually down the line, we know that Arkham Shadow is going to be coming onto the other VR consoles, so battery life won't be as much of a problem as it is now. Maybe it's because Shadow just came out and it's fresh on my mind, but I'm giving this award to Arkham Shadow. And the final category is tone. I'm a huge fan of Arkham Asylum, and the tone and overall presentation of Asylum is a huge factor for why I love it so much. So, by extension, the overall presentation of an Arkham game in general is pretty big for me. So this category embodies the consistency of tone and style. And which game does that the best? And I'm going to give this one to Origins. For its Christmas tone and its emotional tones, Origins nails down its winter setting with the music and the snowy atmosphere, as well as nailing down its emotional beats with the voice acting and the gameplay. It makes you sad, it makes you scared when you're doing the Bane fight. It also gives you kind of an emotional turmoil watching Bruce and Alfred argue, as well as the DLC showing you a switch of emotions when you grow to understand and sympathize with Mr. Freeze. Arkham Shadow does this really well with its fear tone and its scarecrow sections, and the feeling of being out of your comfort zone while you're undercover in Blackgate. But when I think of these two, I can't deny that Origins does it a little bit better. The soundtrack makes it a perfect Christmas game, and with its decorations and Alfred trying to give Bruce a Christmas dinner, and the fear it inflicts with the Bane sections, it's just unmatched for me. And that's why Origins gets this award. Now, with the award ceremony over, I'm sure I don't have to point out which of these won the award ceremony, and therefore is my favorite Origins game. But I think Arkham Shadow is one of the best VR games that I have ever played, and it's up there for Arkham games too. But the original holds a special place in my heart, and for me, it's the best of the trilogy. I think this game is long overdue for a remaster that irons out all the bugs, because it's a huge part of what's holding it back. It's still early on, so maybe my feelings will change down the line. Maybe more playthroughs of Arkham Shadow will change my feelings for it so that it's higher than Origins. But as of right now, that's how I feel. In any case, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment letting me know what you think, because I like comments. And happy holidays to all, and have a happy new year.